Welcome to today's episode of The Breach Room, where we sit down with some of the sharpest minds in the cybersecurity industry to uncover the truth about navigating today's trends while mitigating risks. This episode is powered by Alterim, and at Alterim we focused on cybersecurity firms who are tired of dealing with inconsistent pipelines, that are stuck in relying on referrals, or simply ready to grow past the endless networking events that oftentimes don't increase the bottom line. If you're in cybersecurity and you're looking to be in front of the decision makers that fit your ideal customer profile and scale smarter, or just want to see what a relationship growth strategy would look like for your business, feel free to send us a DM with the word growth. And now, without further ado, let's dive right in. We have a very special guest, Ken Fanger. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story?
I would love to. So I am the president of On Technology Partners. I've also written a book called Relax, A Guide to True Cybersecurity, where I kind of go into 30 years of how I've screwed up and I'm still here today, and how you can try to avoid some of the mistakes that I've made. I also am part of the Department of Defense CMMC process. So we help companies to get ready for and pass CMMC audits and certification. And I go out and I talk around the country on humanizing security. How do we bring people back into the conversation? You guys talked about risk. How do you make it so that we're not talking about users are the weakest link, users are the enemy? Why is that actually causing us to be less safe than more safe? And how do we position ourselves, especially as you said, talking about AI coming and what's happening in the world of artificial intelligence relative to the world of real intelligence?
That makes so much sense and a very impressive background. I mean, I know that you've been in cyber for over 30 years. Can you share a little bit about like how your role fits in the bigger picture on technology partners?
So we are actually working to help. Right now, one of our big focuses is how do we keep those small companies in the Department of Defense? How do we keep them? It is very expensive. You're talking $150,000, $200,000 to get certified. So we're working on ways to help reduce that cost, encourage companies to stay in the Department of Defense, the DIB. And how do you do that? How do you pass this journey? Because as we all know in cybersecurity is usually about how to keep everything as safe as possible. But that doesn't always mean how do you be able to actually do your job safely. It can put safety in front of productivity. I call it cyber friction, the things that stop you through cybersecurity from doing your job.
Okay, and how do you go about doing your job safely while staying compliant and safe?
Yes. And some of the things that I talk to people, and one of the books I love is Atomic Habits, Small
Oh,
Changes Over
great.
Time. You know that book. Everybody knows that book. It's a wonderful book
Right.
if you haven't had a chance to read it. But one of the things I say is since security is a culture conversation, especially compliance, you want to try and do it slowly. Don't try and hit everybody with everything. So in CMMC, it's part of the NIST 800-171 control set. There's 110 controls, 320 objectives. Don't try to hit everybody with all of them at once. Pick a couple of them. Get people used to this idea of compliance, security. See how it affects their jobs. Let them be able to talk back to you. If somebody's feeling bad, let them share that day. Let them say, I think because of all the security you put on, I can't get my job done. And I'm going to use an example. I love this example because it's so real for all of us. So I was working with a school, I was doing a presentation, and a few years earlier, that school had gotten a cyber breach. Somebody had clicked on a ransomware attack. And so they went out and they put in best practices. One of the best practices they implemented was a 5-minute timeout on every computer. And now for a cybersecurity person like us, it's like, oh, that makes sense. You want to lock it out as quickly as possible. But when I started talking to the teachers, what I found out is a 5-minute timeout when you're trying to teach a class is very annoying because you're up and you're lecturing. You might lecture for 20 minutes. Well, that means you are going over 4 times in that lecture and having to continue to hit that space bar. They don't
Makes
like that.
sense.
They don't want to have a 5-minute timeout. And so what they did was they brought in their own computers. And that immediately broke all the security that they were trying to put in. And that's when I talk about cyber friction. What is the job you're doing versus what is the security you need? You want to balance those two because if it becomes too onerous to do the security, you'll just go around it. You'll just bypass it because you have a teacher's job is to teach the students. If the computer isn't helping them do that, it's just an interference in their day.
That's a great way to put it. And a lot of industry leaders that have come onto this podcast have shared actually that people are usually the breach when it comes to cybersecurity is they might have the firewalls, they might have the technology behind, but if, like you said, your teacher just goes ahead and brings a computer because your um controls were hindering her job, like where do we find that middle ground?
So this is what I'm going to start with. Users are not the breach. Users are not the problem. Users are not the weakest link. We have to stop that mentality. That is a failure on the cybersecurity side of the journey. And I remember when I was presenting in front of a bunch of executives, and I said, human beings have been human beings for well over 100,000 years. It is the technology that is not effective for us, not the other way around. When you look at it and you say, oh, people are the problem, you're asking people that have been doing things for hundreds and thousands of years, they now have to change to fit the technology. We need to look at how do we implement the technology. If a person isn't using the security, and I love Dr. Adams, if you get a chance, she's out of
Dr.
Open University in the UK, she wrote an article called Users Are Not the Enemy. And she says, if you have people that are going around your security, the problem is probably your security. You need to review what is it that causes people to feel they can't use it, and how is it creating the weakest link in your users. Instead of saying the users are a problem, they should get in line. And that is a hard journey because you end up with a situation, and we all feel this in cybersecurity. I'm now the enemy to my user, so my user is now fighting me. So I'm not fighting the bad guys. We're not on the same page together. All of a sudden, I'm fighting a user because I'm trying to make them use a security standard that is very onerous to use. They're pushing back because they're trying to get their job done in a reasonable time. And now we aren't even worrying about what the attacker is doing because we're too busy worrying about what Mary in accounting is doing or John in production. And so that's where we have to change our mentality. We have to stop thinking of the users as the weakest link. I love the phrase, users are your first firewall. They need to be brought
That's
in. If they don't,
amazing.
if they don't have a reason to want to be part of your protection, they're against you. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, where that is becoming your user and the attacker are suddenly working together because they both have a different value than you do on what the outcome is.
I love this perspective because you're so right. Like this is supposed to make things easier for the user while still protecting the data. And a lot of, cybersecurity firms are like, no, it's the user because they need more training or they need to do XYZ. But in reality, the technology should be able to adapt to the user's needs. And like in the example that you gave, really powerful. Like I'm sure, like you can tell me how it all ended, but the teachers probably found a way to maybe have a 45-minute timer that is not interrupting class
Yeah.
every 20 minutes or so.
That would have
Every
been the
5 minutes.
answer. At this time, they hadn't fixed it. So that is, again, what you want to do is you want to ask, how do I find a solution that lets the person do their job while keeping them as safe as possible? Because if you stop and think about it, our job is to keep them safe. So if we're causing them to not want to use our security, our safety, and I tell people, would you drive your car if you had to take 20 minutes every day to walk around your block and kick a house and then go back and drive your car? You'd find other ways to travel. This is the same thing. If it takes 10 minutes to log into your computer, you're not going to use it. You're going to do something else. And so we are so excited about security. And trust me, I love security. I try to talk security, but security is there to keep a person safe. If that person doesn't feel safe, if that person feels onerous, you've lost your fight.
Yeah, and so clearly you're an advocate for changing how we promote cybersecurity.
Yes.
If you could wrap it up in one sentence, like what would that actually look like for like a cybersecurity firm that has been putting blame on the user?
So I would start with the phrase psychological safety. It's Dr. Edmonton's book, The Fearless Organization. Your users should be allowed to tell you they don't like it, they have a problem with it. You need to create a psychologically safe environment. I'm going to share with you a story. This actually happened to us. We have a financial institution that we are protecting. And one of the people that's over $1 billion under management, one of the people got a phone call from Microsoft. And now all of your security people are like, oh, that's not from Microsoft. We know that, but in the moment, you can get confused. These people are very good. So this person let them connect onto her computer, but she remembered our training. She remembered what we talked about. And she called us within a few minutes of making that call. And the first thing she said was, I'm so stupid. I don't know why I did this. But my engineer, and I loved him for this, he said, you're not stupid. You just saved us. If you would not have called, they could have had 10, 15, 20 minutes before our systems might have noticed them attacking. You let us stop them immediately. And so you want to reward those people that call you. You want to say thank you. You are part of the defense. She left that call and she was so appreciative. And then everybody else in that organization is now going to say, hey, if I have something happen, I want to call. And so don't punish for failing, reward for doing the right thing, even if it's delayed right thing.
I love that. It completely will change the narrative, of how we approach collaborating with our staff into implementing controls that are actually being part of the culture. And so,
Yes.
what does a typical day look like for you?
So for me, I spend a lot of my time doing things like podcasts, doing presentations. I go to colleges, I go to high schools, talking about how do we get people to want to value cybersecurity. And I'm talking beyond the cybersecurity experts. I'm talking how do we get classes into colleges for a nurse, for a finance person, for an accounting person that teaches them the basic values of cybersecurity because it should be part of everything we do. When I go and I do a presentation to students, I'll ask students, what do you want to do? Some people stand up and say, I want to do finance. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a doctor. And then I'll say, so how many of you want to do cybersecurity? And one or two would say, that's what I want to do. And I say, you know what? All of you need to stand up because all of you are in cybersecurity. If you're a doctor and nurse, you're HIPAA. If you are part of pharmaceutical, you're going to be Part 11 compliance or Department of Defense, CMMC. So there's standards that you have to understand. We should teach those at the beginning, at the junior highs, at the high school, at the college levels.
That is so powerful. I remember back when I was in college, my mentor, he was really close with the dean, and we were working together and pushing for like a fintech program where we learn all of these principles because they're not offered in the regular finance program. And he said, like, like students don't need that, but that's not right. Like you said, like every single business uses cybersecurity, whether you have whether you work at a psychologist office or a dental clinic or an attorney's firm, like all of those places that are in people's mind not related to cybersecurity are actually technology businesses. They have CRM and they're dealing with personally identifiable information. And if they experience a breach, like it could even take them out of business.
Yes, yes. And they all have that danger. So we should teach it like we teach driving skills. And when you're young, road safety skills. We should be teaching cybersecurity skills earlier and earlier.
I like the way you put that. And so on technology partners, like what are you like mainly responsible for? Like what would be the end goal of attending all of these different universities and conferences and podcasts to expand this awareness?
So from On Technology Partners, it's not directly. This is my give back. It is my way of trying to help our industry. So On Technology
Thank you.
Partners, obviously the goal we want is to make the Department of Defense industrial base safer. And that's what we're focused on. But I want to make the entire country safer. I've actually volunteered with the Ohio Cyber Reserve. We help all the schools and city entities in the state to become NIST Core 2 compliant and help to implement some basic security. So I try to go out as much as I can and just help people, talk with people, have people understand what's coming next. How do we get safer? And how do we bring people back into these conversations? And I was just talking with a good friend who owns an MSP out in Denver today. And there are so many people that are older that don't know how to use technology and they're afraid of it. And how do we let them? Because if you're afraid to use your mouse just to click on one thing, imagine now putting all the security on top of it and not knowing how to use your computer anymore. These are the journeys that we are going to be facing as we continue to move forward. And technology, we talked about AI, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. It's advancing very quickly, and a lot
Yeah.
of people get left behind and don't know how to take that next step. And I'll tell you, real quick story. I was just helping a friend. He's older, he's retired, he's in his 70s, and he was on a social network, and a nice person was talking to him, convinced him to do cryptocurrency, and then basically ended up tricking him. And he did it by using a real cryptocurrency. He used coin market cap. But what ended up happening was he only gave him the View app on his phone. So he saw his money, but he couldn't actually interact with it. And the guy was
Oh, wow.
slowly stealing the money out of that account and just pretending like it's just losing money. But he couldn't get it when he figured it out. And so these people are really good because he did. He took the time to check the app. He did check out the company, the coin market cap. But what he didn't do was he let that person use their email address to create the account. And so he had no actual rights to the account. So if anybody's listening and they have somebody saying buy crypto coin, make sure you own the email that opens the account so they can't steal it from you. And don't give that password to anyone.
Yeah, and if you can use a cold storage, even better. Like I've heard so many cases where people save the 20 keywords in their computer,
Yep.
and then if they get access to that, all your crypto is pretty much gone. You mentioned like on technology partners, that is like you're giving back, to bring this culture of cybersecurity awareness. What type of clients or engagements do you seek? I know you mentioned defense. Is that what you primarily focus on, or finance? 'Cause
So, so we're primarily focused on defense, but we've moved into that over the last year and a half. So we have about 100 customers, very few of them. Well, now we've gotten about 15 that are in the defense industry, usually smaller companies, $100 million or less is our target. And we help them by making sure that they're ready for the culture change. Because one of the things when you talk about compliance, it's not the technology. And for a technology person to say that seems kind of wrong, but it is about how do people agree to do the technology? Are they on board with doing it? And so we help your company to get ready to get certified and go through the assessment. And we help your people to understand what's coming. We are not a do it for you company. And I tell people that want to get certified with CMMC, you can't just hand it off to somebody else and it'll be done for you. You have to be involved from the beginning to the end, and it's an ongoing, continuous process. Once you get certified, you have to recertify every 3 years. You have to self-certify every year, which means it has to be a cultural change. If you're not on board, if you don't want to change how you do your business, you're never going to get certified. And that's important for us to teach. And it's desperately needed because manufacturing industry is old, relatively speaking. The people who own it are older. A lot of the people who work in it are older. And that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's what we run into a lot because this is a really new trick for these people.
It is, but without a doubt, one that is a must in this day of time. When you're trying to convince these companies to adapt these changes and get certified, or they're looking self for get certified, how do you convey these conversations of, hey, it's not done for you. I'm gonna be kind of like a guide and consultant, but you need to be ultimately in charge of this. How do you go about having those conversations? Where do you find these people?
So when we're talking, and I want to share this because it's really important, one of the problems with being in the Department of Defense chain, business chain, the DIP, is the enemy may not want to financially destroy you. The enemy may not want to take down your business. So most people that suddenly do cybersecurity is because they got breached. They got a ransomware attack. They got some type of attack that cost them their business or some part of their business. And so now they're ready to be secure. The problem is that Chinese and the Russians and the North Koreans and the Iranians, they want to understand how that bolt that you put into that F-16 fighter can be made to fail during an attack. So you may never know you've been attacked. But one of the things that I talk to people, and this is why it's important that it's going to be a mandate for all contracts coming out of the Department of Defense. But I tell people, if we can keep you safe, you keep a soldier safe, you keep an airman safe. Because if the enemy knows a flaw in your plane, they will exploit that to kill that pilot. They'll exploit that to kill that soldier. And you don't want them to be able to do that. So it is critically important that we are protecting these things to save our soldiers' lives. And we do that here today. And that seems to resonate very often when I'm talking to the CEOs of these companies because they do want to be patriotic. And that is a patriotic part of this journey.
Yeah, especially now that it's kind of like a technology warfare, like information warfare back in the day. Now it's the technology warfare. And
Yep.
so you mentioned you're serving clients that make less than 100 million that are specifically in the defense industry. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. That is our primary focus. Yes.
And how do you go about connecting with these people? Like, where do you find them? How do you convey the fact that it's better to be proactive than reactive in order to protect our soldiers?
So the ways we reach out, we use a lot of associations. So up here in Cleveland, we work with Manufacturing Works. We are out in Colorado, Northern Manufacturing Association. And so I will come out and work with these present groups and do presentations. And I'll talk about what is CMMC, how's it going, what's the roadmap that you're going to face, how you want to do it. So one of the things I tell people is if you are very dependent on your DoD contracts, let's say 70% of your business comes from DoD contracts, it's going to take you between 1 and 2 years to get certified. So you want to start today, expecting that in 2027 and 2028, you would be ready for the certification because what's going to happen is January of this coming year, the first contracts are going to come out with a requirement. When that requirement hits, you'll have 12 months to get there. But if you're a small business, it could take you 18 months. So at the beginning of the year, we only had one company talking to us. We now have about 7 or 8 companies that have contacted us to move forward. We expect that number to continue to increase as people realize that this is going to happen. The government is
Yeah.
going to force it. So we have actually been very lucky. People have been reaching out to us because I do presentations and podcasts like you and promote this and talk. So I did a real great presentation with the Department of Development for small businesses on what CMMC is, what's coming with it, and how you can get ready. And we have a special 7-phase process that we actually take a company through to get them through the CMMC journey. And that has
Mm-hmm.
been very helpful. It makes it easier, it's not overwhelming, and it's very straightforward that my engineers bring to the table.
Yeah, when you can break it down like that, and I really like the fact that you have your own like platform for people to come find you, because that ultimately is the goal. You provide value to people. They start trusting you. They start listening to you. They know the work that you do, and eventually they'll reach out.
Yep, that's
And so
exactly right.
with like the new requirement coming up in January is like the perfect time for you to onboard more clients, right? To get them prepared, because they only have like 18 months before it goes into effect. Like,
Yep.
what are some of the main challenges that you're facing right now to get more people to implement this training, this roadmap?
So one of the things, and I think cybersecurity has this pain, period, is I don't think I need it. I think we've all heard that business that says, oh, they don't want me. They're not interested in me. We actually had a law firm that said, oh, they wouldn't care about us. We're too small. And the problem is you are an easy target. And those are the hardest things. We have one company we work with that makes a certain type of metal. And they're like, we've been doing this since World War II. Nobody's ever come after us. The problem is because of the fact that you don't know if they came after you, because they're not going to do a ransomware attack. They're not going to shut your business down. You have no idea if you're already breached. And a lot of these companies have already been breached. They've already lost information. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
One of the things, so I was out at Dayton, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for an event, and there's over 500 small businesses at this event. This was not this summer, but last summer. And somebody stood up and said, how many of you know what CMMC is? Only about 25 of the people raised their hands. And of those 25, very few realized what it would take, including a panel of small businesses up in the front. And so there's a very big disconnect. And unfortunately, what's going to happen is when this hits, and the government has already said they're doing it, they don't care if you're not ready, you're going to figure it out one way or another, you'll find out. I was doing that presentation with the Department of Development. We had a third party assessor on the call, and he gave an example that never even dawned on me. He said, if you clean a military base, you have controlled unclassified information. So you have to be CMMC certified. And you don't think about that. But how do you clean a base if you don't know where to go? But if I want to attack your base, if I saw, oh, look, there's the armory, there's where the colonel is, that's a lot of really valuable information that you don't want the enemy to hold. So controlled unclassified information is a very broad piece of information that affects anyone that has any touch of the Department of Defense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually never even like thought about that being a potential breach, until
Yep.
you mentioned it. What has been working well for you right now to grow your business, and what has been like a little bit frustrating?
So I'll be honest, it is now working well doing these things like these presentations. Writing my book was very helpful, but it took time. So I wrote my book back 3 years ago. I've been slowly promoting it. It takes time to
Congratulations.
build that up. Yep. Great book too. But it's not going to come instantly. You have to take the time. You have to be out there. If you're a small business like us, it comes down to personal connections, personal engagement. We do social media, especially LinkedIn, but that's only to build our brand. The real growth comes from personal connection types of things. Going out, meeting your customers where they are, talking to people, having a very good newsletter can be very helpful if it's very informative and people sign up for it. So these are the tools that we have been using that has been very successful. If you are personable like I am, go out and do presentations, go out and talk. I reached out to our Secretary of State, and I'm now going around the state doing presentations on cybersecurity. See what your state is doing. See if there's grants available to help you go out and reach out to people. There's amazing things Ohio has. I know Colorado has it. So I imagine the other states do too.
Yeah, no, and all of those things are great. Like you mentioned, they will strengthen your brand. And when people look you up, they're gonna find your book, they're gonna find your articles, they're gonna find your podcast, they're gonna see you doing conferences, and it will position you like as an authority in the field, right?
Yep,
But all of those
exactly.
things take a lot of time. Like, have you ever thought about using AI to save that time and still be in front of the decision maker?
We do use AI almost every day. I use it to help build my content. I present on AI. So I always tell people, remember, AI is a wonderful tool, but don't trust it to do it by itself.
Of course
The
not.
term trust but verify is my favorite term.
I like that.
So we use ChatGPT and Copilot. We have it help us build a lot of our framing. We use it to review some of the security standards. Again, never put anything that's proprietary or private into a public AI. If you want to do stuff with AI that you want to keep secure,
Very
create your
smart.
own secure AI environment. And if there's people, we have some partners that do that. We don't do that ourselves. But AI, and I have this conversation and I always tell people, AI is a wonderful tool, but don't think it's going to replace your team. Don't think it's going to replace everything. But what it can do is it can augment your team. I'm able to
Exactly.
do things with AI that I could, I'm not a drawer, I can't draw, but I can use ChatGPT to make an image that I can then frame around. But ChatGPT is just going to throw an image at me. And it's going to use whatever I said previously to build that image. And so you still have to be involved. You still need to have people that are on the process and in the process. And don't trust it by itself. Don't replace your whole staff with AI. I've heard the companies that are doing that, and it's just not good.
Yeah, I even read the article that you posted, the great AI delusion is not falling apart, and how like big companies like Salesforce and Gartner and even Klarna, are starting to realize that, because 90% of my business is run by AI, but it's automating the simple repetitive task, like you
Yes.
said, but there's a lot of overseeing that needs to get done to make sure that it's working properly. And there's also a lot of customizing and optimizing while we continue to do business, because things change, and you start realizing better ways to automate, better tools that are coming out as well. And speaking
Yes.
of better tools, there's one that we've been using a lot to pretty much be in front of the decision maker without having to do all of the like heavy lifting, of going to conferences and reaching out personally and doing all of those things. Are you familiar with like an SDR and what that means?
No, I'm not. What is that? I'm interested in learning.
It's sales development representative, and what they do is they usually, find key leaders or industry leaders or decision makers, and they will reach out to schedule a meeting to
Okay.
present, cybersecurity services. But with AI, we're able to now, you know, browse through LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which will give you every single active LinkedIn profile from, like people in defense, for example. And then from there, the SDR will automatically reach out to them in a personalized way to see if they want to collaborate with you or to see if they want to learn more. But instead of you doing all that work manually, which is building your brand for the long run, you're able to leverage AI with information that is not sensible because it's all on LinkedIn, it's all on their websites, to get a hold of the right person. So instead of going through the secretary and then from the secretary maybe to the decision maker, it will give you the decision maker email address for us to connect with them. And like you can send 10,000 emails in a month and have hundreds of meetings booked with the help of AI.
It's
Have you
exactly what you should use AI for. That sounds like a wonderful system.
Have you thought about implementing any of these new technologies?
I will definitely look into that. I think that is really valuable. I think that's an excellent use of the AI structure. And I like how you guys are having it go through LinkedIn and do that research because, again, that's exactly what you want to use AI for. I don't want to go and manually go searching through LinkedIn trying to figure out who is this person, who's that. I mean, that's how we did it a couple years ago. That was the thing. Go into
That's
LinkedIn
how
and
I used to do it too.
yeah. Um, but using that AI to automate, I can do 1,000 people a day where it used to take me 1,000 days to get a couple of people. So that
Exactly.
sounds like a perfect way to kind of hit that. And The nice thing is you probably are using AI to then craft a letter that is very personable to that person. And you can do that 1,000 times over without having to take the time to write, okay, Mary, CEO of so and so, or John, CEO of so and so. It goes out, it finds that, it finds the things that they are excited about on LinkedIn so that you can make that personal touch conversation 1,000 times over in a week.
And once the conversation is flowing or is ready to be engaged, then you go ahead and oversee that conversation.
Yes.
I love your mind. You're super smart. It's like you're 10 steps ahead of, like the average folk. So what metrics are you mostly like focused on improving right now, Ken?
So we, in our sales cycle, we obviously are looking at how much interaction on LinkedIn is happening. That's our LinkedIn side. We have how many people sign up for our information distributions. Usually when I do a presentation, I get about 25 to 30% will sign up for information, either CMMC, artificial intelligence, cyber insurance, depending on what I'm presenting on. And then we have right now, I have a team on the back that then reaches out and engages them and nurtures them to the sales position. And that's how we've been able to move forward with the companies we're working with. And hopefully we have, I think, 6 proposals out right now,
Nice.
and that is up. So at the beginning of the year, like I said, we would get about 1 a month. Now we're getting about 6 a month. And we expect that to continue to grow as we move into the next year. In fact, we're looking at managing how many come in because we have a problem, and we all know this in cybersecurity. We have to find enough resources to keep moving on the next opportunity because we're having a lot of good opportunities, and there's a need for anyone that wants to go to college for cybersecurity to go to college for cybersecurity. We need you out there.
Yeah, without a doubt, is like Chief Information Security Officer is like one of the titles that keeps gaining weight and weight as years go by. And so, where do you want your company to be in 6 to 12 months from now? I know right now it's like literally the perfect timing for you to not send one proposal a month, but send 20 proposals a month. Like, where do you see yourself and the company going in the next 6 to 12 months?
So we expect to double the company over the next
Double.
Uh, yep. With everything
I
that's
love that.
happening, we expect to double, and we expect to double again after that. The nice thing about this is we have a lot of stickiness because we are going to be certified in November. And so there's only a few companies that are going to be certified. So if you work with us, it's going to be hard to move to another company because they'll also have to carry that certification. So we will be in a good place. It's costing us a lot of money right now. We're paying over $150,000 to get certified, and we are a small company. There's only 7 of us in the organization. We're looking to grow, we're looking to hire, but it is going to be growing quickly. And we would not be surprised if after the new year, we're looking at 3x growth in the company.
Yeah, especially with the new requirements that are gonna be coming out next year.
Yep.
And so when you say double, like what does that actually amount to? Like making 1 mil, 2 mil, and want to turn that into four?
So we are at 1.3 last year. So we're expecting to be close to 2.5 at the end of next year. And we think we'll be at 5 or 10 the following year, depending on how things go. And again, one of the things we are looking at is how do we get the employee capacity because we need good, reliable people that are focused on details. So I am actually not the best person. I am a pie in the sky person. I look at the big picture. We're looking for people that really want to get down into the dirt and be like, okay, these things need to be done at GCC. These things need to be done for your policies. These things, and really does the IT dot the I's, cross the T's. You can see why I shouldn't do it. I can't even get that straight.
No, I get you. Yeah, someone that will be on the day-to-day in the
Yes.
business, right? Like
Yep.
working with the clients, like a manager that is overseeing the engagement and managing the relationship with the partners and the president or the CEO of the company.
Yep, exactly. And really is into that detail focus. The wonderful thing is, my wife owns the company. She started out life as a nurse manager. Nurses are a perfect example. They have to be very detail oriented. She's a wonderfully detail oriented person because let's face it, you don't want to give the wrong medicine to somebody that can kill them. That's the type of people we're looking for. So that's going to really take every little detail seriously.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, finding talent is one of the, I would say, most difficult things about having this remote world, because you're not there in the office every day making sure that they have the good habits, that they're paying attention to the things that actually matter.
That is one of the things. So we've been virtual for almost our entire existence. And one of the things I've always said is if I have to motivate you to work, it's not the right fit. I want to give you the space to do the things you love to do. We have a rule at On Technology Partners. We call it the 70-30 rule. You should love your job 70% of the time. You're going to hate it 30% of the time. And then every month we go and we talk to our employees and we ask, are you in the 70 or are you in the 30? If they're in the 30 too young, we have to change their job. I don't have to sit there and call up any of my employees and say, are you working this morning? What are you doing this morning? They want to work. They usually call me. One of the biggest problems we have in the company is I got to get them to stop when they go on vacation because I don't want them to be working on vacation. I want them to take that time and recover, and they want to keep working. And I love that. And that's the type of people we want. I want somebody that wants to be working, and I want to make sure they have the tools to work the way they want.
And let's pretend like you find the perfect staff for the next, like 6 months and you're ready to onboard new clients. What would that actually mean for your business?
Well, it would mean we'd be growing and we'd be growing quickly. Um, so if we can find the staff, we know there's enough opportunity out there. And one of the nice things about the new CMMC world is I don't see anybody as being a competitor because there's 85,000 companies that have to get certified and there's nowhere near enough companies helping them. So I'm spending more of my time talking with what would be, quote, a competitor and seeing how we can work together to make sure we're getting the things that need to be done. It's a really wonderful experience because how many MSPs out there are looking at that next MSP and saying, oh, I got to keep you out. You're bad. You're terrible. We aren't doing that. We're saying, okay, there's enough work. What are you doing? What are we doing? How do we make this better? And it's been fun. It is absolutely phenomenal how that's going.
That's the best way to go about it in business. Nobody's really your competition. There's always enough companies out there that need your help, especially when you're helping companies in the defense industry because you're really helping the nation.
Yep. Yes, it feels good to do that. It is one of the nice things about cybersecurity is you're really helping people when you're doing it right, and that feels good.
Absolutely. And I cannot thank you enough for everything that you do. And so, what would be like the biggest lesson you've learned in your journey that has helped you become who you are today, Ken?
So I will tell you, one of the things that took me a long time to learn is I'm a visionary. If you ever read the books, make sure you have that implementer to help back you up and listen to them. We tend to want to run off a cliff and see if we can fly. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes you fall. And having that person that just
Yeah.
kind of pulls back and makes you have to think about what you want to do has been amazing for me. It has been helpful. My wife is a very practical person. She worries about the money. I never worry about the money. I'm like, oh, just spend it. We'll make more. Just go out, just do it. That's what you want to have. If you are a visionary, if you're starting a company, make sure you have that person that's going to tell you no and tell you why you want to think about what you want to do next. Because if you can get that balance, you can really be successful.
I couldn't agree more with you. My business partner is actually that person that keeps me grounded in like more of like the reality instead of going ahead and jumping off the cliff right away, and making sure that we have like a very structured approach to things. So I cannot agree with more with the words you said. And if there was a message that you would like people to take away from today's conversation, what would you tell the audience that is listening?
So I would say two things. One, if you're thinking about doing it, do it. If you think about
Mm,
starting a company, go start it. If you're thinking about changing jobs, change. Find what you love and what you're passionate about because your life is going to be a lot better. Um, I'm 57 years old and I've come to the realization that live retirement now. If I'm not happy every day right now, I'm not going to be happy after I retire. I have too many friends who have worked at their job and all they do is say, when I retire, that's what I'm going to enjoy. Do what you want today. Don't wait.
more is not guaranteed.
No, tomorrow is not guaranteed, and you're still not going to do it because if you're not doing it now, you're not going to do it later. So if you're young, go out and do all the things you've been wanting to do. If you're old, do the same thing.
I love that. All we have is the present moment.
Yep. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so excited that you decided to hop on this podcast, and I cannot thank you enough for your time today. I cannot wait to see the things you'll accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months, even 18 months. And I want to thank you for these insights.
It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed this. You've been great.